Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report News Hour, 16th year of Changi, the leap 6th month, shall we call it, and then the 5th day of the month. It's the 5th day of the month. Yes, that is correct. We're in the leap 6th month. Okay. I guess we'll get used to that. Okay. Calling it that way. All right. And Tim Miller singing for the second king of Cherry with Kyung Jin-moon. And so let's go check out what's going around the kingdom right now. In Chongpyeong, Tennessee, 70 degrees and sunny, high of 88 today, partly sunny, warm and humid, a thunderstorm in spots this afternoon. Tonight, 71, thunderstorm in spots this evening, otherwise partly cloudy and humid. And in Cheongju, North Korea, father's hometown, currently 88 and partly sunny. Clear to partly cloudy tonight, low of 71. Tomorrow, high of 90. Very warm and humid with times of clouds and sun. At the Cheonryung Palace in northeast Pennsylvania, currently 69 and partly sunny. 96 for a high today, very hot with sunshine and a few clouds. And then tonight, 68, partly cloudy and humid. Well, yeah. At least you should be thankful that you're getting into the 60s during the evenings. Some of us would love to be in the 60s. But anyway, right now in Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, currently 73 and very warm, plenty of sunshine today, high of 99. Clear and partly cloudy, low of 74 tonight. Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 81 and partly cloudy, low of 74 tonight. Tomorrow, sun through high clouds and very hot, and high of 98. And at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, right now 92, mostly cloudy, getting down to 74 tonight, passing evening shower or two, otherwise clear to partly cloudy. 95 for a high tomorrow, hot with some clouds, then sunny. And then in Ilan, in Taiwan, currently 85 degrees. And tonight getting down to 76, a shower in the area this evening, otherwise partly cloudy. And then tomorrow, a high of 96, very warm with some sun, then turning cloudy, occasional rain in the afternoon. So it is hot, 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 all across the northern hemisphere. Don't know what's going on in the southern hemisphere, but yeah, it is hotter all the way around here, that's for sure. Okay. All right, let's look at the word. Let's see here. True Love is the book that we're in, chapter 2, the substantial reality of love. And section 4, the love of husband and wife. I think we've been here a couple of times, haven't we? I hate to turn the page because I feel like okay. All right. So parents that are true, and this is, we talk about true parents, right? True parents. And of course, the Korean word there is champumo. But father will sometimes, not often, but sometimes he will say chamten pumo. So that would be parents who are true. And obviously there he's not talking about the true parents, capital T, capital P. He's talking about parents who, me, you, anybody else who's a parent, who are true. Not that I'm true or anybody, but anyway. And so anyway, here he talks about cham ten kubo, parents who are true. So that distinction here. So parents who are true, okay, will try their best, will do their best to carry on the tradition of love. And that is the same in both the East and in the West. And it's interesting to me that today in sort of the English-speaking world, we're no longer supposed to say the Orient, right? That's it's something can't remember the reason, but anyway, it's politically incorrect. And yet, it in Korea, especially, but also in Japan too, I think, still Tong in Korean Tongyang, which literally is the equivalent of Orient, is used quite commonly. So, so you have Tongyang and you have Soyang, right? You have Orient and you have Occident. So people are not quite so hung up on that kind of thing. um, there are other instances where they are hung up on language, but this is not certainly not one of them. So anyway, there's the same, whether it is in the, let's call it East Asia, or just the East, it's the same as it is in the East or in the West. Transcending tribes, all parents try to establish the tradition of universal love. They all try to, every person wants their family to be harmonious and united and happy and peaceful. And that is the kind of life that people in both the East and the West would like to have. In this case, tradition is the essential aspect. The reason is that only tradition can connect people to the future. That's interesting. That only tradition connects us to the future. You normally think that tradition connects us to the past, but no. Since it's tradition that you carry on into the future, right? Some years back, the high school that I attended had its centenary. I think they had their 100th birthday. I believe that was it. Yeah. And so I got to thinking what it takes for an organization for an institution to continue for 100 years. Because actually, if you look at, there aren't a whole lot of places. Of course, Harvard, of course, and universities like that, but also some other institutions. But it's not as common as you might think, because the market is always changing, for one thing, and if institutions cannot change and adapt to the market, then they go out of existence. And each generation that comes along has to be committed to carrying on that institution to the next generation in line. And so I was thinking about that because Father talks about the work of the Providence going on for centuries and thousands of years and 10,000s of years and so forth, and the tradition that we're establishing today going on for tens and thousands of years and so forth. And as you can see right now, there are challenges in doing that successfully. right now we have a challenge, you might call it a crisis, where the so the legacy of father, or shall we say the legacy of father, I guess you could say, is sort of divided into basically three parts, and there are little tiny satellites also wandering around, but basically three parts. And you and I are convinced that the second king of Chanuguk is the one who was anointed by True Father, and the third king was also anointed by True Father to carry this on, and so forth. But there are people who disagree, and in my opinion, they are kind of under some kind of a spell, but they feel that they are right, and they want to continue their thing. But you know, yeah, I believe that as time goes on, time will basically take care of things, and eventually everyone will be uniting around the anointed lineage of the second king and third king, and then whoever comes after that, whoever is anointed after that. But it is our responsibility to take what we've received from True Father, and pass it on to the next generation, so that that generation can pass it on to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, and so forth and so on. And it's a monumental responsibility and task, as if we were to falter, if we were to, or if any one generation were to decide that it's just not worth the effort, then it dies. It dies, right? It ends, comes to an end. And many traditions have come to an end. Many countries have ended, and many societies have ended, of course, because the people who were part of those societies or part of those countries were somehow absorbed into other countries and societies and so forth. And well, let's take the 10 tribes of Israel, right? I think that's an example of a tradition not being taken to the next generation. And they were presumably absorbed into the other societies around them, and so they disappeared from history. All right, so those are my thoughts on Father's Word today. So tradition, carrying on the tradition, the difficulty of that, and the responsibility of doing that. Okay. All right, let's go to what's happening today, and I want to start with this story about North Korea. Yesterday, of course, we had a story about North Korea responding negatively to the overture from South Korea, from the leftist president of South Korea, wanting to have better relations. And they said, no, we're not interested. We're not interested. Remember that Kim Jong-un now has, he's destroyed the Unification Monument, the Unification Arch that used to be on the highway that led from the demilitarized zone into Pyongyang. And he has closed all the organizations that previously were dealing with the relations with the South. And he has said that, you know what, we don't care. We don't care. We're not going to try and unite with the South unless it is by dominating the South, unless we conquer the South. If there's going to be unity, that's the only way that there's going to be unity. So that was what was at the beginning of last year, right? I think that's right. And so, even though a leftist president has come into power now in South Korea, they said, no, we're not interested. We're not interested. Just so. But now, today, the U.S. North Korea gave a much more, I would say, much more shall we say, do I dare use the word friendly? I don't know if friendly is quite the word, but less bellicose, shall we say, not quite as bellicose statement regarding relations with the United States. So this is also Kim Yo-jong, right, the sister, and so they're saying, okay, yeah, we're ready to have discussions with the U.S. on the one condition: do not use the N-word. Okay. Don't even mention the nuclear weapons. Do not even breathe the word nuclear. Okay, do not use the N-word. I hope that by this time, everyone in the administration has figured out that the current North Korean regime is not going to denuclearize, and they have absolutely no interest in talking about that. And the reason is clear. The reason is clear. They believe, although I believe that they're wrong, and many others believe that they're wrong, but they believe, and this is an important thing, they believe that nuclear weapons are the ultimate guarantor of their sovereignty. And that without nuclear weapons, they say, well, look what happened to Gaddafi, right? He gave up his weapons, and wow, the United States came in and bombed him, and he died. Or look what happened to Saddam Hussein, you know. And if Ukraine still had nuclear weapons, would Russia be invading them now? I mean, I haven't heard them say that about Ukraine, but I think that's the kind of thinking that North Korea has. That nuclear weapons in the modern age, this is the guarantor of sovereignty for small countries like North Korea. So anyway, so she says that talks aimed at denuclearization would be interpreted as a mockery. So, okay, they don't want that. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's influential sister has called on the United States to accept North Korea's irreversible status as a nuclear weapons state, warning that dialogue will never lead to its denuclearization. And take her, yeah, you got to take her word for that. I think she really means that. In a statement carried by the state-run Korean Central News Agency on Tuesday, Kim Yo-jong said a recognition that Pyongyang's capabilities and the geopolitical environment had radically changed should be a prerequisite for everything in the future. Any attempt to deny the position of the DPRK, that's the Democratic, well, they explained here, the People's Republic of Korea. Hey, listen, it's democratic, right? It's democratic. Any country, well, let's see. Well, you have the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but that country is not communist, but it's got problems. What other countries have democratic in their name? Can you name any? I can't right off the head, but Vietnam, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, so but just certainly in the case of North Korea, the fact that democratic is in the name is a red flag. Also, People's no, okay. PRC, People's Republic of China, as the communist China. So people in the name of the country is also a red flag. DPRK as a nuclear weapon state, which was established along with the existence of a powerful nuclear deterrent. And this is what they keep emphasizing. It's a deterrent and fixed by the supreme law, reflecting the unanimous will of all the DPRK people, will be thoroughly rejected. Any attempt to deny this will be thoroughly rejected, Kim said, using the acronym of North Korea's official name, Democratic People's Republic of Korea. South Korea is just the plain Republic of Korea. Some people make a mistake and say the Republic of South Korea. And that is a big diplomatic no-no. It's the Republic of Korea, South Korea, and then DPRK, North Korea. The DPRK is open to any option in defending its present national position. Kim Yo-jong, who oversees the propaganda operations of the ruling Workers' Party of Korea, so that's what they call their Communist Party, the Workers' Party of Korea, said that it was by no means beneficial for the U.S. and North Korea to be in confrontation, and that Washington should seek another way of contact on the basis of such new thinking. So what other ways, what other issues are there to be discussed between the United States and North Korea? Well, actually, there is one that comes to mind. and that is the recovery of the remains of U.S. soldiers, U.S. military personnel who died during the Korean War. And this has been done before. Teams of U.S. military have gone to North Korea under an agreement between the two countries and recovered remains and brought them back for identification. So that's something that could be resumed. I haven't heard anything that's been going on recently, so that's something that could be resumed, I think. And maybe that's something that the administration perhaps ought to think of. So if they're saying, yeah, we're ready to talk with you, just don't talk to us about nuclears, then okay. So the door is open, although it's just a crack. But I think U.S. should go ahead and take advantage of that. Trump should go ahead and take advantage of that and do whatever you can. What other issues are there between the U.S.? Japan and North Korea have a few things going on, but U.S. Well, let's see. Okay, yeah, the counterfeit dollar bill currency. There is that. There is that, yes. Stop printing our currency, please. Especially since you're so good at it. There is that. And then also, oh yeah, stop infiltrating your tech workers into our companies, please, especially the Fortune 500 companies. There is that. So there are a few things that I think U.S. and North Korea could talk about. Okay. And Kim said that while the relationship between her brother and U.S. President Donald Trump was not bad, and yet, hey, not bad is pretty good, okay? Okay. Any attempt to use their personal relations to advance denuclearization would be interpreted as a mockery. If the U.S. fails to accept the change of reality and persists in the failed past, the DPRK-U.S. meeting will remain as a hope of the U.S. side, she said. Kim's comments came after an unnamed White House official was quoted by South Korea's Yonhap news agency over the weekend, saying that Trump was open to engaging with Kim Jong-un to achieve a fully denuclearized North Korea. Her statement also comes a day after she dismissed South Korean President Lee Jae-myung's efforts to mend ties with Pyongyang, including halting propaganda broadcasts at the tense inter-Korean border. Since returning to the White House in January, Trump, who held 3 face-to-face summits with Kim Jong-un in 2018 and 2019, has repeatedly expressed interest in resuming dialogue with Pyongyang. Last month, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that Trump would like to build on the progress made during his 2018 summit with North Korean leader in Singapore. While the Singapore summit marked a historic first-ever meeting between a sitting U.S. president and the leader of North Korea, the talks and Trump's subsequent meetings with Kim in Vietnam at the inter-Korean border failed to halt the advance of Pyongyang's nuclear weapons programs. Jenny Town, the director of the Korean program at the Stimson Center in Washington, D.C., said Kim Yo-jong's latest statement is consistent with recent messaging from Pyongyang. It avoids naming Trump directly, leaving room for some kind of diplomacy in the future to still be possible, but dispels the notion that denuclearization talks can simply be picked up where they left off, Town told Al Jazeera. Too much has changed since 2019, both in terms of North Korea's weapons of mass destruction development, the legal and policy changes around its nuclear program and status, and the broader geopolitical environment for any notion of resuming talks about denuclearization to be compelling. If negotiations are possible, the terms of engagement have fundamentally changed, Town added. It won't be about denuclearization, but there may be room for talks under a different framing. However, whether the U.S. is willing to take that leap is yet to be seen. Right. So the primary objective of U.S. diplomacy with regards to North Korea remains the denuclearization of North Korea. And I don't know, maybe they're just going through the motions. Maybe, I don't know, but they're talking about something that's just not going to happen under this regime. So if you say we're going to pursue denuclearization, what you're saying is we're going to pursue regime change because under this regime, there will not be any denuclearization. Remember, Trump went there and I think at Panmunjom, wasn't it? He showed Kim Jong-un what he could do for North Korea in terms of real estate development, kind of the South Florida coastal condos type, high-rise condos, right? I have to laugh because um, people are always talking in terms of their own reality. And I think one of the keys to actually helping people and actually helping people to develop in a constructive way is to put yourself in their reality. But Trump showing Kim Jong-un that sort of model of coastal high-rise condos to me was an excellent example of someone who is speaking out of his own reality. I'm a real estate developer, and I can develop your real estate. Okay. Not realizing that Kim Jong-un does not want his people to be that rich or that wealthy. He does not want that. He needs to keep them under a certain standard so that they will, and he needs to keep them hungry to a certain extent so that they will do what he says, right? That's kind of dictatorship 101. Introduction to dictatorship, that you don't want your people to be all that wealthy. You may say, well, what about Xi Jinping? Well, yeah, and look what problems Xi Jinping is having now. But even him, it's only a minority that actually is enjoying this improved living standard in China. The majority of the population is still dirt poor. All right, let's see. So with North Korea, we'll see what happens with that. And so we mentioned Xi Jinping, so let's segue into this one. Oops. Trump says he's not seeking a summit with Xi, but may visit China. We've referred to this, but that would be an important development. So let's keep up and update ourselves here as things happen. The president made the remarks as his administration officials held a third round of talks with the Chinese officials in Stockholm. Okay? Yeah, I think that's the trade talks that are going on in Stockholm. President Donald Trump on Tuesday dismissed reports suggesting he was seeking a summit with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, but said he may visit China at the invitation of Xi. The fake news is reporting that I am seeking a summit with President Xi of China. This is not correct. I'm not seeking anything. The president stated on Truth Social, I may go to China, but it would only be at the invitation of President Xi, which has been extended. Otherwise, no interest. If it proceeds, the visit would mark Trump's second trip to China as president, the first having taken place in 2017 during his first presidential term. Trump made the clarification as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was meeting with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng in Stockholm, Sweden on July 28th, that would be yesterday, Monday, for a third round of negotiations to finalize a trade agreement before the August 12th deadline, after which tariffs will increase if no deal is reached. During the interview with Fox Business on July 22nd, Fox Business on July 22nd, Bessent suggested that they may seek to extend the temporary pause in trade measures between the world's two largest economies. We'll be working out what is likely an extension then. He said, hopefully we can see the Chinese pull back on some of this glut of manufacturing that they're doing and concentrate on building a consumer society. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer told CNBC on July 28th that he did not expect any enormous breakthrough from the U.S.-China trade talks, but viewed the continuation of trade talks as a positive indication. Our discussions with the Chinese are always cordial and constructive, Greer said. This is the third round in the past 3 months, so just the fact that we're talking and we want to move forward in a positive way is its own good sign. Both economies have sought to end a trade war in which the United States raised tariffs on Chinese goods to pressure Beijing to address the trade deficit. China responded with retaliatory tariffs, sparking a back and forth that pushed U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports as high as 145%, while China's tariffs on U.S. goods rose to 125%. On May 12th, they reached a temporary agreement under which the United States reduced its reciprocal tariff on Chinese imports to 30%, and China lowered its tariff on U.S. goods to 10%. The deal also includes a rollback of certain trade restrictions. Trump said on July 27th, and that would be Sunday, that his administration is very close to finalizing a trade deal with the Chinese Communist regime, but did not give further details. We really sort of made a deal with China, but we'll see how that goes, he told reporters during a meeting with the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Scotland. Okay, that's all that we have there. Okay. So we'll see. They refer here to the glut of manufacturing. And of course, China is trying to sort of send that to other countries, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, etc., and then try to export it to the United States from those countries, sort of changing the labels and so forth. And the U.S. is onto this. And so they're also penalizing those kinds of indirect exports. So President Trump seems to have China on the defensive with this tariff thing, but China refuses to acknowledge that. And of course, they're in crisis right now, with the economy being stagnant, at least, perhaps in a recession. Well, they have deflation going on, and that's causing problems for them to repay their debt, to handle their debt. So it's a bad thing that's happening with them. And also companies are having to cut their prices and lower their prices, and then the government comes in and says, hey, don't lower your prices. We don't want you putting things on sale and that kind of thing. All right, so that's what's going on there. But all this other stuff is window dressing, right? And President Trump's job one is to bring down the Chinese Communist Party, not just Xi Jinping, but the whole thing. Okay? In the Soviet Union and in 1989, it wasn't 1991. It wasn't just Gorbachev. It wasn't just a matter of Gorbachev quitting. It was that the whole communist system came down and the whole Russian Empire crumbled. That was what was important about that. And so also here, we're not looking for just Xi Jinping to be replaced. That will not solve the problem. In fact, that will give hope that the new guy may be better. He will not, but it'll give people hope. And so people will sort of give him a kind of a honeymoon period. We don't want that. We don't want that. We want the whole communist system to come crumbling down as quickly as possible. All right, let's see here. Here's one that we should probably watch out for. Okay. I've mentioned VPNs in the past. VPNs stand for virtual private networks, and I have a habit of using them. I use one particular one. I think I actually have two. And if one's not working very well, I just switch to the other one. For example, right now, my VPN shows that I'm in Houston, Texas. So basically, VPNs will sort of hide your actual address, your address online. We call it the IP address. And even though I'm not in Houston, if someone were trying to track me, they would think that I was in Houston. And as you've maybe seen, sometimes I have a problem with it because some websites will detect that you're using a VPN, and they say, "Hey, we don't like people who use VPNs. We don't like people who are trying to hide behind VPNs," and so they will not show it to me. But then I just change it to another location that they don't know about, and it works very well. So anyway, apparently there are some Chinese-owned VPN apps, and bipartisan senators are urging Apple and Google to remove those. Let's see which ones are owned by China. So I link to which ones are they? Give us the list. Come on. Turbo VPN, VPN Proxy Master, Snap VPN, Signal Secure VPN. Okay, so these are apparently connected to Qihoo 360, which is a Chinese thing, Communist Chinese thing. And then in total, the research group identified 13 China-owned VPN apps. Okay, well, give us the whole list. Come on. No, give us the whole list. All right, well, anyway, so be careful, be careful. I'm confident that the two that I'm using are not connected to China. But be careful, okay? But VPNs are a good idea. Let's see here. Oh, yes. That's another Trump story. We have Trump shortening the deadline that he has given to Putin to stop the war. Ah, boy, what does this mean? Trump shrinks Russia's peace ultimatum to 10 or 12 days. So, ultimatum always implies something, right? So you do what I want you to do by this time and date, or else what, right? What is President Trump going to do at the end of 10 or 12 days if Putin doesn't respond? And I think there's a high probability that Putin's not going to respond. I think Putin is saying, hey, let's call his bluff and see what happens. So what is he going to do? That concerns me. President Trump in the past has talked about bombing Moscow and bombing Beijing and stuff like that. I hope he's not serious. President Donald Trump on Monday said he was reducing the 50-day deadline he gave to Russia over its war in Ukraine to 10 or 12 days, underscoring his frustration with Russian President Vladimir Putin for prolonging fighting between the two countries. He spoke briefly with reporters while welcoming British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Starmer's wife Victoria at Trump Turnberry Golf Course in Turnberry, Scotland. I've spoken with President Putin a lot. I always got along with him very well, but 5 times, and every time 4 times maybe. But we've had discussions, Trump said before turning to Starmer. You and I have had discussions. We thought we had settled numerous times. And then President Putin goes out and starts launching rockets into some city like Kiev and kills a lot of people in a nursing home or whatever. You have bodies lying over the street. And I say that's not the way to do it. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm very disappointed. I'm disappointed in President Putin, very disappointed in him. I think he's disappointed. What do you think? How many times did he say disappointed? So we're going to have a look. We're going to have to look. And I'm going to reduce the 50 days that I gave him to a lesser number because I think I already know the answer. Trump later said, yeah, I'm going to make a new deadline of about 10 or 12 days from today. So this is sort of coming off the top of his head, it sounds like, right? And he says there's no reason waiting. So if Putin is, for example, if Putin is reading this article, right? I'm sure he doesn't get his information from what is this, Newsmax, but he gets his report from whoever reports to him that, okay, sir, we've got 10 or 12 days now. Putin's going, what? So which is it? Is it 10 or is it 12? Which is it? We don't really know, sir. And what happens at the end? Well, we don't know, sir. Anyway, Trump continuing here, asked whether he were still open to peace talks with Putin. Trump said, I'm not so interested in talking anymore. Ukrainian President Zelensky's chief of staff thanked Trump for the deadline reduction. Yeah, I'll bet. Okay. Trump set the 50-day deadline earlier this month. The U.S. president has repeatedly voiced exasperation with Putin for continuing attacks on Ukraine, despite U.S. efforts to end the war. So what is he going to do? Are we going to have to find out? Trump has threatened new sanctions on Russia and buyers of its exports unless an agreement is reached by early September. But the president, who has also expressed annoyance with Zelensky, has not always followed up on his tough talk about Putin with action, citing what he deems a good relationship that the two men have had previously. Okay, so we'll see. We'll see. So the Russian side is saying that there are no plans for a meeting right now. Well, it sounds like President Trump is maybe changing tack on on Putin, and one thing that he might do would be to sanction Chinese banks that are doing business with Russia, and that would be good. That would be good. And this is what China actually fears. And so, yes, if he would do that, that would certainly contribute to the fall of the Chinese Communist Party regime. And perhaps that's how God can use this disastrous war. God did not start this war. This is not a war that he wanted. It's a disastrous war in every sense of the word. But maybe God can use this war by having the United States sanction Chinese banks that are doing business with Russia, and thereby dealing a serious, maybe fatal blow to the Chinese economy. That would be great. That would be great. Yeah. But as we've seen, though, this is a situation, with the fall of the Chinese Communist imperial power. It's going to be a situation of be careful what you ask for, because okay, if the United States deals a fatal blow to the Chinese economy, then that the not just ripple effects, but the tidal wave effects. The tidal wave is going to sweep across the world. Of course, China, of course, South Korea, of course, America, of course, Europe, of course, Australia, uh, Africa. Africa may benefit actually because they owe a lot of money to China, and if they don't have to repay that money, then they may come out ahead. I don't know, but it's going to be a tremendous tidal wave that is going to cause a huge amount of damage all around the world. But listen, sometimes you just got to take your medicine. All right. If we're going to liberate the people of China, we're going to liberate them, we need to do what's necessary and deal with the consequences. So it's not just economic, but also, especially in the case of the United States, if the U.S. Economy goes into a deep recession, or as some people are saying, something worse, in other words, a depression, as a result of the Chinese economy falling, then I would expect a great deal of social disruption. And we already have a certain amount of people going in and shoplifting stuff and taking stuff out of stores and stuff like that. And I would expect maybe full-scale looting to occur. And it's going to be a pretty terrible, pretty bad situation. But may God's will be done. Not our will, but may God's will be done. May God's will be done. It would be nice if there were, an easier way to sort of do kind of a soft landing, so to speak, of the world economy, but I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. Yeah. And we'll see what happens. and it could, the Chinese regime in a last-ditch effort to unite the country around it could stage some sort of a military adventure, either towards Taiwan or towards Russia. Maybe conquering Vladivostok, which used to be a Chinese city in the up until the 19th century, that kind of thing. And so I think there's a lot of sort of black swans floating around, flying around, or floating. I guess swans don't really. Do swans fly? Yes, they do. Anyway, floating around. They usually float. And of course, the black swan is an event that is not impossible. It's actually an event that everyone agrees is possible, but it is so improbable that almost no one bothers to prepare for it. And it has to be an event of far-reaching consequences. And certainly China's Communist Party collapsing and putting the whole world into economic and social and political upheaval, I would say would qualify as a black swan. All right, let's see. What else have we got going here? The Telegraph. Trump just exposed how irrelevant the Europeans have now become. This sort of caught my eye, but now that I look at it, it doesn't look all that interesting. Sometimes half hour later, things don't look as interesting as they did in the beginning. Let's take a look at Breitbart. I know, but these days Breitbart has very few stories that are really interesting. They've sort of turned into a campaign organ, but and I'm in other words, yeah, yeah, their level of I'll just say their level of objectivity is not very high. Let me just say that. All right, let's see here. Okay, dawn of a new era for global trade, right? Okay. Trump averaged one piece steel per month. Okay, and then of course the shooting in New York. All right. Nolte said we need real accountability and indictments for Russiagate, but let's keep our eye on the ball, right? It's China. It's China. It's China. And all right. John Kennedy, we don't need more gun control. We need idiot control. Hey, good idea. Good idea. All right. Deion Sanders has bladder cancer. To some of us, that means something. And James Carville says Dems have a bucket load of talent coming. But so if that's true, why is Kamala Harris leading in the polls for California governor? If you have a bucket load, I don't know. I think James Carville better check his bucket to see if it might have a hole in it. Okay. And Lara Logan, blast COVID mandates and big pharma. I regret vaccinating my children. Yeah. We live with the merit of the age, or the opposite, or the demerit of the age, I guess you call it. And definitely, people who were forced to get the COVID vaccination were unfortunately just, in many cases, just born in the wrong time. Okay, born 50 years earlier, 50 years later, would not have had to worry about that. But I hope that whatever consequences you're having as a result, I hope that you're able to deal with them wisely. All right, and the courts are still trying to stop Trump in various ways. And here, well, yeah, this is one that we need to do. China purges the top Shaolin monk and accuses him of having a love child and stealing funds. So this is the kind of accusation that communist regimes often make against religious figures. I'm not saying he's innocent. Maybe he did have a love child. Maybe he had a dozen love child. I don't know. Maybe he did steal funds. I don't know. I think maybe the Shaolin Temple may not have, world level accounting practices, but this is obviously an attempt by China to shut down a religious organization that they consider to be a threat to their authority. Chinese authorities over the weekend launched a probe against Shi Yongxin, abbot of the Shaolin Temple, on allegations of embezzlement, misappropriation of temple funds, sexual misconduct, and violation of Buddhist precepts. Oh my goodness, the Chinese Communist Party cares about the Buddhist precepts. Is that nice? The Shaolin Temple, located in central China's Henan province, was founded in the year 495. The temple declared as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2010. Is described as one of the most famous Buddhist monasteries in the world and is widely known as the cradle of the Kung Fu martial art. Shi, who has now been stripped of his religious ordination, has become abbot of the Shaolin Temple in 1999. According to the Chinese state-owned Global Times, that's a Communist Party propaganda outfit, Shi was elected as vice chairman of the Buddhist Association of China in September 2002, an organization directly controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and was widely denounced for allowing the Chinese regime to exert control of the Buddhist religion by appointing pro-regime Buddhist abbots in China and suppressing Tibetan Buddhism. So he bowed down to the Chinese Communist Party, right? And said, okay, Shaolin Temple will be loyal to our masters, the Chinese Communist Party. And then he gets purged. And this is what happens every time. This is what happens, This is what happens. And people, for example, say, oh, look, Xi Jinping's allies in the military are being purged. Well, that happens all the time in communism. Dictator Xi Jinping has championed the full subjugation of all religions, placing them at the service of the ruling regime's communist values. And that's certainly true. And the South China Morning Post also reported that Xi served as president of the Henan Provincial Buddhist Association since 1998 and was a deputy to the Chinese National People's Congress from 1998 to 2018. The now defrocked abbot was widely known by the nickname CEO Monk for his extensive commercialization of the Shaolin Temple's cultural heritage and influence, turning it into a global brand. On a recent visit by a New York Times reporter, the opening act for the temple's famous monk Kung Fu show was a calligraphy demonstration. The MC pitched 3 calligraphy works, selling for 300 renminbi, $42 each. At least one was sold successfully, the far left newspaper. I like that. New York Times reported on Monday. Good for Breitbart. Yeah. Far left newspaper, New York Times. There you go. Okay. Suddenly my evaluation of Breitbart has risen about 2 stars up from about 3 to, no, not all the way to 5, but let's say 4.25 maybe. Okay. Not a full 2 stars, but 4.25 we'll give them. To leave the show, audience members had to exit through a warren of gift shops selling not just the usual souvenirs, Buddhist figurines, t-shirts, and refrigerator magnets, but also sneakers, jewelry, and Labubu dolls, the report continued. Okay. So anyway, he's been purged now, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with that. But the Chinese Communist Party, again, going after religious figures. Okay, let's see here. All right, what else do we need to do today? Let's look at the Epoch Times top stories. I'll keep going to the wrong. They're very similar. Okay, there we go. All right, they're leading with the shooting in New York on Sunday. Okay. And also in Reno, I guess, as well. All right. And Netherlands bans entry to 2 Israeli ministers over Gaza war rhetoric. Rubio applauds ceasefire as Thailand-Cambodia border remains tense. I guess okay, I can stop there. Well, let's take a look at this Supreme Court Outlook article, what they're going to do next term in October. Court will take up cases on major social and political issues, including males competing in female sports, redistricting, and IQ. Is it an I? Yeah, that's IQ, isn't it? What's IQ doing in the Supreme Court? Maybe you have to have a certain IQ to be president? No, probably not. Right, state bans on men's and women's sports. We'll just run through these. And what else? Colorado's ban on conversion therapy for minors. In other words, homosexual or minors who think that they're homosexual, and helping them change back. Or, oh, I see. They think they're girls, but changing them back to boys. Anyway, conversion therapy. Redistricting to favor minorities. Okay, always redistricting is an issue. Political parties coordinating spending with candidates. Okay. That's kind of a political thing there. Challenge to ballot counting after election day. Okay. New Jersey sues pro-life pregnancy centers for its donor list. Yeah. And controversial street preacher. Well, who's this? In 2021, this guy, Gabriel Olivier, was arrested and charged with violating a city ordinance from Brandon, Mississippi, which designates a particular protest area for demonstrations at events. And he showed up to a concert and called people whores and Jezebels. Afghanistan veteran challenges defense contractor. Okay. Weighing IQ and the death penalty. Oh, I see what's going on. Okay. In 2002, the Supreme Court said intellectually disabled criminals could not be sentenced to death because this would violate the Eighth Amendment's bar on excessive punishment. Since then, courts have attempted to apply that ruling to cases in lower courts. One such case is Ham versus Smith, which involves a man, Joseph Clifton Smith, who received multiple IQ scores of a little more than 70 points. An average IQ is 90 to 115. A jury in Alabama found Smith guilty of murder, for which he was later sentenced to death. However, before his sentence was completed, the Supreme Court issued its 2002 decision on intellectual disability. After a series of appeals, the federal court eventually removed his death sentence on the basis that he could have an IQ of less than 70, which is the state's benchmark for intellectual disability. Okay. I see. All right. Some people will ask me whether there will be a death penalty in Chattanooga. And my answer is that I don't know, because it's up to Congress. There's nothing in the Chattanooga Constitution, as far as I can remember. I think even treason, I don't think is necessarily defined as a capital crime. I'll have to check, but I don't think so. Anyway, so there is, as far as I can remember now, there is nothing about death penalty in the Chattanooga Constitution. But, Congress can do what it wants with the signature of the president, or, of course, overcoming, there's always the option of overcoming a veto and so forth. So right now, we'll see. But the first principle of the Constitution, Principle 1 of the Constitution, talks about respect for life, and it essentially outlaws abortion. And so if you outlaw abortion, if you say, okay, we're going to preserve life at the beginning of life, beginning of a person's earthly existence on earth, or even in the womb, then it would make sense that you would want to be consistent and not have a death penalty. The death penalty basically negates the role of the physical body. And it sends someone to spirit world one might say prematurely, or before his natural death. So I think, if I were a member of Congress in the Chunuguk, I think I would probably lean toward not having a death penalty in Chunuguk. Of course, self-defense will be allowed. The Second Amendment, or the right number 2 is there, and people are allowed to have the tools for self-defense and exercise the right of self-defense when it's necessary, and to transition a person to spirit world when it becomes necessary in order to defend themselves. But for the state to officially say, okay, we're gonna put an end to this person's physical life and then put him in an electric chair or whatever, that's a different matter. That's a different matter, I think. And so I think my position would probably lean towards not having a death penalty. But it's very unlikely that I will be in the Chunuguk Congress, and so, but anyway, maybe one of you will be. All right, gotta go, and I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday, so we will continue our study of the change of blood lineage, and so I will see you then. God bless, Godspeed, may His